So bases to me are always an extension of the figure. And whenever I speak about or think about bases, I come back to this episode where a few years back someone said to me, looking at a base of mine, that it makes no sense that these rocks or whatever I was using from a miniature to stand on would lie just there exactly the way they would for the miniature to stand on. And it might be a very obvious statement, but if your miniature fits or integrates with the base you created, then why would it not make sense that it is standing like this or having the stance it does, or whatever form of interaction it has with the base because of the way the terrain is shaped? Of course, we know that the miniature came before the base and you build the base around it, but again, you can do whatever you want with your base as long as the interaction with the miniature makes sense. And you can argue everything with, if the structure wasn't there, our miniature would not be standing or behaving like this. A base should always underline an aspect in your figure, in my opinion. Of course, you can create a base that completely contradicts your miniature or creates contrast or invokes a feeling of strangeness and alienness, but that is also telling a story. Maybe a story of the miniature being out of place, so we maybe have an explorer or invader or something, or someone that is lost, or whatever story you want to tell through that. Another storytelling aspect, and something I like to do with my miniatures, and especially if they are very dynamic, they have dynamic poses, is to emphasize the movement with the base. A very simple but effective approach to that is to reinforce the notion of direction with lines created by elements on the base. And that's also what I did for Thor's base. Another example that you already know is my Squig's base, that reinforces the forward motion of this creature. Obviously the forward bent mushroom plays a role in that, but I also one little detail that I did was made this nose of the stone point forward, so that is, creating a line here with the jaw, so that almost feels like it's underlining the forward motion. Another thing is the circular shape, where the squig's body is actually just an elongation of the base, or vice versa actually. And another thing that I haven't shown yet is, for example, this guy. The sculptor wanted this to stand on a line like this, right? So the alignment was like that, a horizontal line. But so here we have a lot of options, right? If we take the horizontal line, it becomes a bit more facing upwards. So the rifle or the gun faces upwards. Slightly, but we can also take this and incline the base. It's a bit difficult to show here, but we can incline the base, and then all of a sudden the rifle points towards a horizontal enemy or whatever he's trying to shoot. It shows a bit better like this. So we always have the option to change a certain aspect of our figure with the alignment of the base. Keep that in mind. And again, in this case, I had the notion that he's bracing against, this cliff, this upwards facing cliff, to get a better footing for his shot. Which again could be interpreted totally different if we were facing the rifle or the gun upwards, like the sculptor intended. So yeah, you have a lot of options. Look at the miniature you have in front of you and decide what story you want to tell, and then design your base around that. And I did the same thing for Thor. So I know that a lot of people criticize the base, that it's kind of weird and doesn't fit properly. And the original base, obviously, that it comes with is just this gray part up here, and we only have this stance here. I don't know why people don't like it. I kind of like it. it feels like, you know, he's stepping onto this and then jumping over. From the front, everything's hidden a bit, but also that, you know, is, in my opinion, just underlining the notion that he is a brawler and he's in the thick of it and he's stepping through the rubble and then he's just finding something to strike. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to underline the both the forward movement and that the combination of being slightly hidden and having to take the step or take a step, just walk up a slope to be able to jump over this and then strike the enemy. So I wanted this line to be emphasized, which I did through having this part and then another part sloping upwards and culminating in this being the highest point. And I also wanted this line to be more prominent, so I created a V shape that is sloping downwards even more, and without having to actually sculpt something or putting, you know, something on the base, the line here, just by having this part elongate outwards, it just becomes more prominent and more pronounced. So there's a couple of things that we did. Like I said, this line sloping upwards, and then this line also, having or creating the illusion of the figure standing on top of something more than anything, more than on just a flat surface, with also, you know, this part being longer up and having this V shape here underlines this forward and upwards motion of the character. So yeah, let me just quickly show you how I did that, how I built the base before we talk about the painting. I have a regular rectangular wooden block here that I just use for, you know, most of my single miniature Space Marines. I have these two variations. It's just wood that I got from a craft store and had it cut into different shapes, different lengths, and just two variations. Sometimes the square variety, sometimes the round variety. I just like, you know, since this is not really super elegant, slim miniature, it's rather bulky, and also the base that comes with it is more square and aggressive. So I feel like, you know, the square base gives us a bit more space to work with, and overall it fits the more bulky appearance a bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, you know, I already marked it here, have this part of the base overhanging, but I'm going to continue sculpting these parts down here, so it's actually going to be a bit more integrated with the wooden block. And I'm also going to make this space a bit wider, so it's actually more like a stair that he's stepping up. Okay, so that extra space is going to elevate the whole figure a bit more, and we can actually create a slope with, you know, elements on the base that goes up like this. So here it's gonna be really shallow in the front, and then we are going to have a larger element or a higher element here, and the front part is actually gonna be even lower, so it's a bit of a slope, guides the eye towards the miniature a bit more. Okay, so that is the large chunk fixed in place. So what I need now is just some support, put some milliput over to have a bit of wiggle room to adjust this foot so that it fits right there, and it will also leave a mark so I can see where to put the foot afterwards. So I'm gonna do that quickly. Right, so as I piled on stuff onto this base, and I also cut away some part here to make it, more levels, multiple levels. So as I did all of that, I kind of noticed that once I put the miniature on, I feel like everything is just too deep, and the base draws, deep, I mean this part, and the base draws a lot of attention. I think I'm going to do one more thing to rectify that. I'm going to cut away this part here to about here, and then in the back probably make the base straight too, so that I can paint the edges black to up here. I always like the integration into a base, if that makes sense. So sort of like here, where we will have a very sharp border between the black and the actual elements of the base. So I'm going to, like I said, cut these parts away and make them smooth, and it's going to close probably with the border of the wooden base. You're going to see what I mean, and I think that's going to look even better, because it levels this left foot a bit more like this, and still has the integrated feeling of multiple levels on this base. Oh yeah, and I'm also probably going to do away with this part, so that it still has this rectangular feeling from above, and this one element sticking out, and I think that's enough. Right now the base looks a bit overloaded and too massive, and dwarfs him a bit, makes him look smaller than he should probably appear. As always, I just start on something, and as it evolves I'm going to correct a few things. It always means a bit more work, but I feel like being creative with bases, just as with miniature painting, and then just trying things and not being afraid to take a step back and say, okay, that idea wasn't too good and it would probably look better, to dial it back a bit. I think that's always a good thing to do. Okay, I think that gives a better idea of what I want. More confined edges here, and still some parts that come to the front or come out of the borders. Yeah, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to detail all of these parts, and then I have found something in my bits box to make this a bit more interesting. And what I want to do is I want to mimic the style that Games Workshop carves their stuff. So let's continue. So I already started to cut out wider cuts, moving in line with what they did up here, and I'm also cutting into the plastic a bit. And yeah, just take what they did. So some of these parts, something like this here, the sharp cut, I'm also going to do that here. I'm just mimicking what they're doing with their bases. And I have a thinner layer of maybe put over the main body here, and that's always a good spot to do stuff like that, where you just scrape away the upper part, and then it exposes the lower part, and that looks like sort of like this here, where the whatever this is, there's like a thin part put over some more steel concrete material, and it leaves interesting edges, and they do that a lot, so we can mimic that here. And then we need to rough the lower parts up a bit. Okay, so one more thing that we can add some detail is I'll just cut into this and make a second cut like that, so that way this looks like yeah, a scratch, not a scratch, a crack that just runs through this here, through this hole. A stone here, and then do another one like that. And that creates some interesting detail on top of that, and we can, you know, scrape away a bit here. Makes it look like some parts cracked away where these two, yeah, smaller cracks meet, and then we can scrape away. Okay, now everything more or less went away, but it's okay. So like that, it's still clinging to it, and this is going to be fine. So once it's base coated, and that's just, you know, a happy little accident. Add some more detail here on the front. I'm going to do more like what they had here, so just some minor damage up here. And then have deeper cuts running down here, and I'll just reduce this a bit in general. Okay, so we can also, you know, create some holes here and random scratches like this. And then tone that down a bit by just going over it like this, and that way it will leave some like impacts with sharper lines. Right, and yeah, maybe extend these bullet holes down here. Right, and as we add more detail, you can see that it gets more credible, more realistic, more interesting. And again, I'm always kind of sticking to a random pattern, try not to be too regular. Yeah, so I experimented a bit with various positions of the fingers, and I think it might take away too much from the whole sloping upwards, and I think this element just sticking out of the base again, yeah, that just adds a bit more detail without interfering with the composition too much, and it still has that sloping feel upwards, and even from the front it underlines this line a bit that goes from here to here. It's a slope too, and that reveals our character. Yeah, I think that works. I think that's what I'm going to run with. Yeah, put a bit of a stone here to frame it. Okay, yeah, I think that's the final result. Obviously, we're going to add some detail with foliage and maybe some filaments or whatever, but this is the outline. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to run with as a frame. Yeah, I think I like it. Again, we have this line sloping and it reveals our character here. And yeah, it still gives him the impression of he's rising through this rubble and then maybe getting ready to jump over this and smash something with his fist. Yeah, I think the composition works. So let's get to some painting in the next video.